You spend your whole life building something, a home, a family, a legacy, believing it'll all mean something in the end. But sometimes, the person you build it for is the one who tears it all apart. My name is Robert Miller, and for 65 years, I lived by one simple rule: family comes first. I grew up with nothing. My father was a factory worker, my mother a waitress. I promised myself that when I had a family of my own, I'd give them everything I never had. And I did. I worked construction for nearly 4 decades. I built homes for strangers while dreaming of one day finishing my own. When my wife, Carol, passed away 15 years ago, I thought my world was over. But then there was my son, David. He was 17 back then. My reason to keep going. Every nail I hammered, every dollar I saved, it was all for him. College, a car, even a down payment for his first business. Whatever he needed, I made it happen. Because that's what fathers do, right? They build so their children can climb higher. And for a while, it looked like it worked. David grew up smart, ambitious, confident. He moved to the city, started a company, and called me every Sunday. He'd always say, "Dad, none of this would have been possible without you." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. But people change, and sometimes they change so slowly, you don't notice until it's too late. A few months ago, he came to visit. First time in almost a year. He brought expensive gifts, smiled wide, talked about how proud he was of me for still keeping the house standing. I thought he missed me. I thought he came home because he cared. I was wrong. After dinner, he sat me down in the living room, same couch where I'd once read him bedtime stories, and said, "Dad, I've got an opportunity. A big one. But I need your help." I laughed. "You've got my help. Always." He smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile I remembered. It was practiced. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it, a legal document. My house. My land. He wanted me to sign over the property so he could invest it in a development project. Promised it would triple in value, said I could live easy after. Something in my gut turned cold. "David," I said quietly, "this house, your mother and I built it. You were born here." He sighed, like I was a burden. "Dad, it's just a property. Don't get sentimental. Just a property. The same property I built with my bare hands. The same house where his mother died holding my hand." I told him no. I said I wasn't signing anything. That's when he changed. His voice got sharp. "You're being stubborn, Dad. This is why we can't move forward. You're holding on to the past." He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said something I'll never forget. "If you're not going to help me, don't expect me to come back." The door slammed. The echo stayed. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the folder he'd left on the table. The papers that felt like a goodbye. 3 days later, I got a call from the bank. My account had been flagged for suspicious activity. When I checked, I saw withdrawals, large ones, from a joint account I'd opened years ago for David's college. I'd forgotten it still existed. He hadn't. He'd drained it. Every penny. I tried to reach him, calls, messages, emails. Nothing. And then, a week later, I saw a picture on social media. David, smiling in front of a new building. A caption underneath. "A dream finally built. Grateful for those who helped me get here." No mention of me. No call. No guilt. Just a man who used his father's sweat to build his own empire. That was the night something inside me broke. Not from anger. Not even from sadness. From realization. The boy I raised, the one I'd carried on my shoulders and promised the world to, had become a stranger. And as I sat there in that quiet house, surrounded by the ghosts of everything I'd built for him, I whispered to myself, "You took everything I had, David. But you forgot one thing. I'm still standing." Because that night, I made a decision. If my son thought he could betray me and walk away untouched, he was about to learn where he really came from. From a man who built everything from nothing. And knows how to start again. People say a father's love is quiet, not shown in words, but in what he builds, what he sacrifices, and what he leaves behind. For me, that was always true. After Carol died, I didn't know how to live without her. The mornings felt heavier, the coffee colder, and the house too quiet. But David was there. Just 17, still in high school, confused, angry, and lost. He didn't talk much back then. Sometimes I'd find him sitting by his mother's chair, just staring at her photograph. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but truth is, I didn't know that myself. So I did what I knew best. I worked 6 days a week at the construction site, 12 hours a day. The guys used to call me Iron Hands. Maybe because I never stopped, even when it hurt. Every nail I drove into someone else's house, I imagined building a future for David. Every time I lifted a beam, I thought about lifting him higher. He was a good kid, though, smart, focused. He used to wait up for me, sitting on the porch steps with 2 plates of food. We'd eat together in silence, and before heading to bed, he'd always say, "Good night, Dad. Mom would be proud of you." I lived for those words. Years went by, and somehow we made it through. I watched him graduate, watched him pack for college, and even though my heart broke when he left, I smiled. Because that's what fathers do, they hide the pain behind pride. When he got his first job in the city, he called me every Sunday. We'd talk about everything: his new friends, his new apartment, his big dreams. Sometimes, I'd catch the city noise in the background, and I'd imagine him smiling, living the life I always wanted for him. He'd say, "Dad, when I make it big, I'll take care of you." And I'd laugh, "I don't need that, son. You just live your life. That's enough for me." But somewhere along the line, the calls got shorter, then fewer. Then they stopped altogether. Months would pass before I'd hear his voice again. And when I did, it wasn't the same. He sounded busy, important, like the world was spinning too fast for an old man like me. Still, I kept believing. Maybe he was just caught up in work. Maybe success was keeping him away. I told myself that when things settled down, he'd come back. But I was wrong. The truth is, I ignored the signs, the missed birthdays, the canceled visits, the polite but distant tone in his voice. I didn't want to see what was happening. Because fathers don't stop loving their sons, even when they start losing them. One winter, when my health started giving out, the cold hitting my bones harder each year, I got a letter in the mail. It was from David. No card, no personal note, just a business envelope. Inside was a check, $10,000, and a message that read, "Use this for repairs. The roof looks bad. No love, David." No, "How are you, Dad?" Just money. Like I was one of his employees. I held that check in my hand for hours. Not because of the amount, but because of what it meant. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost my son. He wasn't the boy who sat on the porch waiting for dinner anymore. He was a man who thought money could replace love. I kept that check in my drawer, never cashed it. Every time I opened that drawer, I saw it, a reminder of how far apart we'd drifted. But I still believed there was hope. Because that's the thing about love, it doesn't die easy. So when he finally called after almost a year and said, "Dad, I'm coming home. Got some exciting news," I felt something I hadn't felt in years: joy. I spent the whole day cleaning the house, fixing the porch light, even baking that apple pie Carol used to make. I didn't know it then, but that night wasn't a reunion. It was a setup. And the exciting news my son had wasn't about building something new. It was about taking everything I had left. The night David came home, I remember everything: the smell of rain, the creak of the front door, the sound of his shoes on the old wooden floor. He walked in with a big smile, arms open, and for a second, I saw my little boy again. "Dad," he said, hugging me tight. "It's been too long." His voice still had that warmth, but something about his eyes felt different, sharper, colder, like the city had changed him in ways I couldn't see yet. I brushed the thought aside. I just wanted my son back. We sat at the table, eating pie like old times. He talked about his new business, real estate deals, and investors. I barely understood half of it, but I nodded, proud. He had grown into a man of success, confident, ambitious, smooth. Then he looked around the room and said, "Dad, this place, it's falling apart. You can't live like this anymore." I smiled faintly. "It's old, yeah, but it's home." He leaned forward, serious now. "You deserve better. I've been thinking, what if we sell this place, move you somewhere comfortable? I'll handle everything." The words hit me strange. Sell the house. The one Carol and I built together? The one where every corner held a memory? I shook my head gently. "No, son. I'm fine right here." He sighed, trying to hide his frustration. "Dad, you're being stubborn. I'm trying to help you." I could feel a storm behind that calm voice, but I didn't want to argue. I just said, "I appreciate it, son. But this house, it's all I have left." He changed the subject quickly after that, talking about his company again. But something in the air had shifted. He wasn't here just to visit. He wanted something. A few days later, he told me he'd arranged a small investment deal. He said, "Dad, I just need your signature. It's nothing serious, just a property transfer to manage taxes better. You'll still own everything, I promise." I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son, my only family. So when he handed me the papers, I didn't read much. I just signed. He hugged me after, thanked me, said, "You'll see, Dad. This is going to change everything for us." And it did. Just not the way I expected. 2 weeks later, I got a notice in the mail. Property transfer confirmation, addressed to Robert Miller, former owner. Former owner. My hands shook as I read those words again and again. The papers I'd signed weren't for tax purposes. They were for ownership transfer. To David Miller, my own son. I couldn't believe it. There had to be a mistake. I called him again and again, but he didn't answer. When he finally did, he sounded distant, like talking to a stranger. "Dad, I told you this was temporary," he said. "It's just business. Don't make it emotional. Business." I whispered, "You took my home." "It's not like that," he replied, voice firm. "You'll still live there for now. But legally, it's better if I handle things. For now." Those 2 words cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard. He had tricked me. The boy I'd raised, the one I'd sacrificed everything for, had stolen the last thing that tied me to my past. I remember sitting on the porch that night, staring at the fading sunset. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Every wall, every floorboard felt borrowed. Neighbors started asking questions when men in suits came by to inspect the property. One of them, polite but cold, told me, "We're finalizing the sale paperwork soon." Sale? That's when I realized David wasn't keeping the house. He was selling it. For profit. The man who once said, "Mom would be proud of you," had become someone she wouldn't even recognize. I sat in my late wife's old chair that night, staring at the empty space beside me. And for the first time in my life, I cried. Not because I lost my home, but because I lost my son. The next morning, I packed my bags and left before the new buyers arrived. No note, no goodbye. If David wanted the house so badly, he could have it. But he forgot one thing. He didn't just take the house. He lit a fire inside me, one that wouldn't stop burning until the truth came out. And from that day on, I made myself a promise. If he wants to play business, then I'll show him what real loss feels like. When you've lost everything, something strange happens inside you. You stop fearing pain, because pain becomes part of you. That's how it was for me. For weeks, I wandered from one cheap motel to another, carrying just a suitcase and the ache of betrayal. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the kind of anger that screams and breaks things. Mine was quieter, deeper, the kind that waits. People underestimate the silence of an old man. They think you're done, finished, too tired to fight back. But sometimes, that's when you're at your sharpest, when you've got nothing left to lose. David thought he had won. He had the house, the money, the control. But what he didn't realize was that he'd awakened a part of me I didn't even know existed. One afternoon, I went back to town, just to look at the place from a distance. My old house, his house now, was getting repainted, fixed up for new buyers. I saw him there, wearing a suit, giving orders to workers. Confident. Proud. He looked exactly like I used to imagine him as a successful man. But now, that image made my stomach twist. I stood across the street, watching him laugh with a real estate agent. And I made up my mind, I wasn't going to destroy him with anger. I was going to let his own choices destroy him. So, I began quietly. I knew the local real estate game better than he thought. Years of building homes had taught me how the system worked: zoning laws, permits, contractor deals, hidden costs. And I knew one thing for sure: David's success was built on risky shortcuts. He had investors, people who trusted him just like I once did. So, I found one of them. A man named Thomas Clay, a businessman I had met years ago when fixing his vacation house. When I approached Thomas, he didn't recognize me at first. Gray hair, tired eyes, time had changed me. But when I told him who I was and what had happened, he listened. I didn't ask for pity. I just told him the truth. How my son tricked me. How he forged my trust. How the property he was selling might not even be legally clear yet. Thomas frowned. "If that's true," he said slowly, "then your son's playing with fire. My money's tied up in those deals." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than proof. Within days, rumors began to spread, whispers in the investor circle that David Miller's latest project wasn't clean. Deals started to stall. Phone calls went unanswered. And for the first time in his confident, flawless career, cracks began to show. Meanwhile, I took another step. I went to the local paper. There was a young reporter there, Samantha Lee, hungry for a real story. I gave her documents, copies of the signed transfer papers, the bank transactions, and proof of manipulation. Not to ruin him, but to show how a trusted relationship can be twisted for greed. She wrote an article titled, "The Price of Betrayal: When Family Turns to Business." It didn't name David directly, but everyone in town knew. His investors panicked. His name started appearing in the wrong kind of conversations. I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth did the work for me. One evening, I got a call. "Dad, what did you do?" His voice was shaking. I stayed silent. "They're pulling out, all of them. I'm losing everything. Are you happy now?" I took a deep breath and said quietly, "You took my home, David. Not for survival, but for greed. And greed always takes more than it gives." He hung up. That was the last time we spoke for a while. Weeks passed. Winter came again, just like the one when Carol died. I was still living in that small rented room, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not because I'd gotten even, but because justice had found its way without me forcing it. Then one morning, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw him, standing there, no suit, no smile, just a man broken by his own ambition. "Dad," he whispered, eyes red. "I lost everything." I looked at him for a long time. The boy I raised, the man who betrayed me, and now the son who finally understood. I didn't speak right away. I just said, "Maybe now you'll know what it feels like to build something and watch it fall apart." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I was doing it for us." "For us?" I asked. "You did it for yourself. But that's okay, son. Life has its own way of teaching what fathers can't." He broke down. And for the first time in years, I saw my real son again. It's strange how life circles back. A year ago, my home burned in silence, not by flames, but by betrayal. Now, my son stood before me, empty, lost, the same way I once was after his mother died. He looked older, tired beyond his years. The arrogance was gone. In its place, guilt, heavy and raw. He sat across from me, the same table where we used to share apple pie, the same one where he had once promised to make me proud. "Dad," he began, voice trembling, "I don't even know where to start. Everything I built, it's gone. They froze my accounts. I'm under investigation. My friends, they all disappeared." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Sometimes silence hurts more than words. He looked up at me, eyes full of tears. I was trying to give us a better life. I thought if I made enough money, I could fix everything. Fix what? I asked quietly. You can't fix love, David. You can't buy trust. Once you break it, it doesn't fit back the same. He nodded slowly, his voice cracking. I know, Dad, and I hate myself for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I leaned back in my chair, staring at him. 4 years, I'd imagined this moment, the day he'd realize the pain he caused. I thought it would feel good, satisfying, but it didn't. Looking at him, broken and ashamed, I didn't feel victory. I felt grief, because this wasn't just revenge. It was loss, multiplied, mirrored. He stayed for a few days. I let him sleep in the small spare room, the one with peeling wallpaper and the view of the old oak tree. At night, I'd hear him moving around, restless. Once, I caught him standing by the window, staring into the darkness like he was searching for the boy he used to be. In the mornings, we didn't talk much. Just quiet breakfasts, the smell of coffee, and two people trying to rebuild something invisible. One morning, he handed me an envelope. Inside were the documents, the house deed, the business papers, everything he had taken. It's yours, Dad, he said softly. All of it. I already signed it back. I looked at him. Why? Because it never really belonged to me, he replied. You built it. You earned it. I just took it for granted. I placed the envelope on the table. And what will you do now? He hesitated. Start over, I guess. Maybe somewhere quiet. Away from all this. I studied his face, the lines of regret, the weight of consequence. Then I said, if you run from your mistakes, they'll chase you. Face them, son. That's the only way to start over. He nodded. Maybe you're right. Later that day, we drove out to the old house together. The buyers had backed out after the story broke, and the property sat empty, still carrying ghosts of everything we lost. The paint was cracked, the garden overgrown, but when I stepped inside, I felt something familiar, home. He stood beside me quietly, looking around, eyes wet. I thought selling it would make me feel powerful, he whispered. But now I see, this was never just a house. No, I said softly. It was a promise. One you broke. But promises can be rebuilt. He looked at me, confused. You're giving it back to me, he asked. I shook my head. No, David. I'm giving you something better, a chance. To rebuild your life the right way. But not with money. With honesty. He smiled weakly, tears slipping down. I don't deserve that, Dad. Maybe not, I said. But sometimes, forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it. We stood there for a long time, two men broken by choices, bound by blood, standing in the ruins of something once beautiful. And somehow, in that silence, something began to heal. That night, as I sat by the porch with a cup of coffee, I thought about Carol. I could almost hear her voice in the wind, gentle, forgiving. She would have wanted this. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just peace. David came out and sat next to me. For the first time in years, we watched the sunset together. Father and son, side by side, saying nothing, needing no words. Because sometimes, forgiveness is louder than anger. Time passes differently after forgiveness. The days feel slower, quieter, and the heart, though scarred, starts to breathe again. It's been 6 months since that night. David left town to rebuild his life. He took a small job at a construction company, the same kind of work I used to do when I was his age. Sometimes, he calls me after work. His voice sounds different now, softer, humbler, like a man who's finally learning what life really means. The first few calls were awkward. We didn't talk much, just short words, safe topics. Weather, work, old memories. But even in that silence, I could feel something changing. There was guilt in his pauses, and maybe forgiveness in mine. One evening, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm trying to become someone who does." And in that moment, I realized, that's what forgiveness really is. It's not erasing what happened, it's giving someone a reason to become better. I still remember the day he betrayed me. The disbelief, the anger, the hollow feeling in my chest. I thought that kind of wound could never heal. But somehow, forgiveness did what revenge never could. It set me free. Every morning now, I sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the sunrise. The same porch where I once waited for him to come home. And as that golden light hits the old oak tree in my yard, I think about how strange life is. We spend years building walls to protect ourselves, only to realize that healing begins when we let them fall. Sometimes neighbors ask about David. I just smile and say, he's learning. They don't need to know everything. Some stories are meant to stay between a father and his son, sealed by regret, but held together by love. Forgiveness didn't erase what he did. It didn't magically fix the past. But it gave me peace, and that peace, after everything, is the greatest victory I could have asked for. There's a box in my living room, filled with old photographs, birthdays, fishing trips, moments from when life was simple. For a long time, I couldn't look at them. They were reminders of what I'd lost. But last week, I opened that box again. And instead of pain, I felt something else. Gratitude. Because no matter how broken we become, the memories we made in love are still ours to keep. I think forgiveness is like rebuilding a house after a storm. You can't bring back the old one, but you can use the same ground, the same heart, to build something new. Stronger. Wiser. Quieter. And maybe that's what life wanted from me all along. Not revenge. Not punishment. But understanding. You see, when you lose trust, it feels like your whole world collapses. But when you forgive, even if the other person doesn't change, you do. And that change, that quiet strength inside, that's what gives meaning to every scar, every sleepless night, every tear you've ever shed. As I finish this story, I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see a father who fell, broke, forgave, and stood up again. And I see a son who's finally learning what his father tried to teach him all his life. That love, even when it's wounded, is still love. So if you've ever been betrayed, by someone you trusted, by someone you'd give your life for, remember this. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the courage to walk through pain and still choose peace. Because in the end, revenge burns the bridge. But forgiveness builds a new one.